Genesis chapter 41, verse number 14. Just a little bit of housekeeping very quickly. Tonight is going to be a very, very special night. And so I encourage you to make plans to join us for 6 o'clock tonight for our night of comedy with comedian Nazareth. As Josh already said, he came in 2021, and I think everybody was very nervous because I'd had a comedian in 2017 that was horrible. It was like people have gone to therapy for what they heard that night. And you think I'm kidding? Like, he was an oversharer, and it was a bit much. In fact, it was so bad that we had a situation where someone broke into our preschool at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I came up here, and one of the policemen that was here on the scene said, "Well, I've been here before. I came to that comedy night. That was weird." And I said, "Sir, that's an understatement. It was bad. Please do not let that be your last impression of us. Visit us some other time because, oh my goodness." And so everybody's a little nervous. But man, we had such a good time. And I know he's going to do a great job again tonight. So I encourage you to come, be here. And then just something just on the side. I'll talk with the board, maybe with the staff, what we can get into some kind of tithe incentives or things to sit in these front 3 rows in the middle section, because that would be just fantastic. I don't know what we need to do, if we'll give double communion in the future, or if you come sit here, we'll get some incentives for you, because it's just weird seeing the place packed out and empty. But anyways, these are just confessions of someone on the stage. You probably never think of it, but someone up here, it's like, oh my goodness, there's people. I got a couple friends here, but anyways. Hey, I'm starting the comedy night early. I'm doing a little comedy right now. Just scrap the sermon. I'm going to go with it. No, I'm kidding. My wife said, please don't. Please don't. Because she knows I would head into dad jokes. Those are the best kind. I was going to cook an alligator, but then I remembered I only had a crock pot. I could do that the rest of the day if I needed to. Ask my children. Genesis chapter number 41, verse number 14. Genesis chapter 41, verse number 14. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him quickly out of the dungeon, and he shaved, changed his clothing, and came to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream to interpret it. We've been talking about from dream to reality, how to go from the point where we have a dream that is from God. We've talked about how to understand what a God dream is, that it's bigger than me, that it requires God's work with me, and ultimately that it will impact lives beyond me. That's a God dream. And how we get a God dream is get in the presence of God, move from inspiration to participation, because if I'm going to have a God dream, it has to be more than just what I've heard. It must become what I do. And then last week we talked about dream killers, and we talked about how on the journey to seeing our dream move from dream to reality, we're going to deal with doubters. We're going to deal with detours. We're going to deal with distractions. And ultimately, at some point, we're going to deal with discouragement. But today I want to continue looking at the story of Joseph as he gives us more pictures into how to go from a dream to reality. But as we get ready, let me just share a couple of extra statements, because I love to take some time at the beginning of this message each week to just reiterate what we're talking about, because I don't want you to think I'm talking about what you do at night when you go to sleep when I'm talking about dreams. But I'm talking about God giving us a preferred picture of our future. Dreams are God's desires that become manifest through human endeavors. A dream is not what I want. It is what God has desired to do on the earth. And then he gives me a picture, and through my endeavors, I manifest the purpose and the plan of God on earth. You see, a dream is not something I beg God to perform. It is something he has a desire to do and chooses me to be the instrument through which he manifests it. And so Joseph got the opportunity to be this dream carrier in the Old Testament. I think it's interesting that when you read the book of Genesis, that there's Abraham and there's Isaac and there's Jacob, and all three of them are so significant in their place in the history of the nation of Israel. And let me just parenthetically insert this right now. You know what the Bible tells us to do in a season like we're living in right now? It is very clear what we should be doing. We should be praying for the peace of Jerusalem. What has taken place in the nation of Israel right now, you need to understand, is something we need to be very careful how that we hold them up in prayer. Because one of the things that will mess you up, and if this bothers you, that's fine. I'm not going to change my mind on this, is we're a biblical church, not a political church. And people sometimes like to get into geopolitics and talk about, well, Israel should this and Israel should that. Let me help you with something. God instituted a covenant with Israel that had nothing to do with whether they were right or wrong. It had to do with who they were. And he said, those who bless you, I will bless. And those who curse you, I will curse. Period. That's it. There's no other discussion. There's no other conversation. Because you understand, Israel has never in its history been perfect. But you know who deals with Israel? God does. He doesn't put it on us to deal with Israel. He doesn't put it on us to correct Israel. He puts it on us to bless it, and then we're blessed, or curse it, and then we're cursed. And so I want to make sure that for my household, for our church, and for our nation, that we continue to put our blessing on the nation of Israel, continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, because that is the key to the blessing and prosperity of God flowing on our nation. You want to know why America hasn't been more powerfully judged by God for our sin? I will guarantee you it is our stance on Israel. 100%. That is why God continues to withhold his judgment to the degree he has, because we are a stench in his nostrils. But he made a covenant before our nation began, before many nations began, long before we were ever thought of. And he said, if you bless these people, I'll bless you. And so there's a lot of things I want to see fixed in America, but one thing we cannot back down on is our wholehearted support of the nation of Israel, because that's what the Bible says. You say, well, I just don't know if that's relevant today. Well, then you probably need to find a different church, because the Bible never is irrelevant here. We don't bend to culture. We don't bend to the winds of what's happening. We stand on the solidity of the Word of God, because the Word of God has outlasted every culture that has risen up since it. But I don't even know why I'm talking about that, because I'm trying to preach on dreams today. But it's interesting when you read Genesis, the story of the birth of the nation of Israel, that actually Abraham, Jacob, Isaac, all of them their story is detailed, but none of them get as much detail and as long of a text as Joseph. Oftentimes we think of Abraham as so important, but honestly, the truth of the matter is, if you look at the Genesis narrative, the truth is, if Joseph doesn't do what Joseph did, it's irrelevant what Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did, because it would have all died during that famine if it hadn't have been for Joseph getting a dream. And when he got his dream, he began to declare his dream. And the problem with dreams is they are a picture of a preferred future that God has for us. But always when God gives you a dream, it is a picture of a preferred, but another key word is of the future. It is not a picture of your soon to be present. It is a picture of a preferred future. And when God goes to the trouble of giving you that picture, it's to put you on a path towards a destiny. But there's going to be a process you have to walk out. And Joseph experienced the process. If you've been around here very long, you've heard me make this statement a few times because I really like it. And that is, our frustration with the kingdom of heaven and our frustration with God is often based in the fact that we live in what I call a microwave society. We want things here and we want things now. We get frustrated when we have to sit in line at a drive-through because we want our food fast. We want everything to happen fast. I mean, my goodness, J.G. Wentworth said, "It's my money and I want it now." That is our society in a phrase. I want it now. But in a society and a culture that is microwave in nature, we serve a crock-pot God. He's never in a hurry. Because you have to understand that God has a divine purpose and a sovereign will that he's bringing to pass. And the way he accomplishes it is through giving you a dream that you come to a place where you accomplish something that brings to pass his sovereign will. However, knowing that is true, you also need to understand that God is more interested in your development than he is your destination. He is more interested in making sure you're ready when you get there than that you ever get there. And so he is willing to put you through a process of development that may cause you to never get to the destination, because he'd rather you never be at the destination than get there and not be ready. And so Joseph declares his dream. It doesn't start off well. He gets sold into slavery. It continues to go on. He then gets put into prison, and then he gets forgotten in prison. Basically, most historians and biblical scholars say that Joseph probably had his dream somewhere around the age of 17, and he probably became Pharaoh's second in command somewhere around the age of 30. So we're talking about 13 years of process. That's a long time. You're going to have to understand that when God gives you a dream, he's not delivering you to a destination. He's inviting you into a process. And you have to be willing to walk through that process. You have to be willing to endure and experience the fullness of that process. Because in order for you to accomplish the dream, you're going to have to deal with the development. And as you're developing, there are three things that I think Joseph showed that are absolutely necessary if you're ever going to see your dream become a reality. The first of which is this: you must learn how to remain faithful. Faithfulness is a key component to people who don't just dream, but that they find it becoming a reality. You know, it's interesting because Joseph is someone that we talk about all the time as a dreamer. But stop for just a second and remember that we get about 13 chapters of Joseph's story. 13 chapters of the book of Genesis describing his story. You know how many verses say that he had a dream? One. Because you know how many dreams he had? One. We talk about him like all that's important about him is that he had a dream, that God gave him a dream. But the reality is his dream is such a minute part of his story, because if it had just been his dream, he would be a footnote in history. He would be a nobody that you ever heard of. You may not even know his name if it had been that he was a dreamer. The reason why we know who Joseph is because he was an achiever. It was not his dream that etched him in history. It was not his dream that made him someone that we can look to as an example. It was not his dream that literally saved his family. It was his willingness to be faithful through the process until he achieved what God had said was possible in and through his life. Too many times we get so excited about dreaming and being dreamers, but nobody gets excited about being faithful. Oh, everybody signs up for, I want a God dream. I want something that's bigger than me. I want to see a preferred future where I'm making a difference. And everybody wants to sign up for that. That's exciting. That's inviting. That our culture has gotten so, oh, God's destiny for your life and all these things. We get so excited about it, especially in charismatic Pentecostal churches. I mean, we get overly excited about those words, dreams and destiny and the power of God working in our lives. And they're true statements and they're true concepts, but they're held up by your faithfulness. There is nothing that is ever going to happen in a service that will change your life if that's all there is to it. We want to line up. I want impartation. Lay hands on me so I can be imparted upon. And I believe in impartation. But let me help you with something. I don't care who lays hands on you. If you're not faithful after the hands have been laid on you, what happened won't last. People want to come to the altar and get deliverance, and God will meet you mightily in the altar. But if you want to see real deliverance, it's going to be fleshed out in daily faithfulness. Joseph didn't become second in command, the savior of his family, because he had a dream. He became that because when his dream wasn't going well and he got sold into slavery, he worked so hard that he got promoted to the number one servant in his master's house. And then when he got lied on and he got betrayed, he got sent into prison. He worked so hard until he became number one in the prison. And then in the midst of that, he continued to help the butler and the baker with helping them what their dreams meant. And the baker didn't like what he heard, but he told him the truth. And butler told him, and he said, remember me when you get back to the Pharaoh's house. And then Pharaoh forgot about him. But Joseph didn't give up. He didn't quit. He kept on being faithful. And it was his faithfulness that positioned him for the moment of opportunity. You don't know when God's about to release the opportunity for your dream to come to pass. But if you're not faithful, you could miss the moment. You don't know who's going to walk into your job Tuesday afternoon. You don't know. Somebody may be coming in on Tuesday afternoon that has the capacity to literally change the trajectory of the future of your life. Problem is, you decided you didn't want to be there on Tuesday afternoon. And you'll live the rest of your life yearning for a picture that can't come to pass because you weren't in position when the next step was taking place. Y'all quiet this morning. But it's faithfulness. I started out when I was 12 years old. God called me to preach. When I was 16, I made a decision to forego my last 2 years of high school, do it in one, graduate early so I could go to college early, so I could graduate from college early because Jesus was coming and I was necessary for the last day revival that he wanted to bring on the earth, so I didn't have time to fool around. And so I did all that and I got started in ministry, and in 2010, we're talking about now, I've been doing this full time for six and a half, almost 7 years. 2010, I'm in Southeast Missouri, and it's about to be Easter Sunday. And on Easter Sunday, back then, I didn't have a staff. I didn't have a lot of the things that I have right now, but I wanted to make it special. And so I worked up a sermon on Easter Sunday where I sat and meticulously went through and put together movie scores to be background music, to go with exact cues because I didn't have nobody to cue it up. I just pushed play on the CD player. And so I planned out a 35-minute sermon where I dramatically told the story of Peter for Easter Sunday, and I spent hours preparing to get ready for that special Easter Sunday, because Easter Sunday, man, that's when it all happens. And I got up and I went up there on Easter Sunday morning, and you know how many people were in the sanctuary at First Assembly of God, Steele, Missouri on Easter Sunday 2010? It was a grand total of 18. And I'm going to tell you, when I walked in and saw that number, because we usually had at least 35 or 40 on a normal Sunday, and saw 18 on Easter Sunday after I had worked so hard. But you know what? I determined that this isn't what I saw in my dream. This isn't the picture God showed me. But if I don't remain faithful, see, because some of the things that I've seen come to pass in my life in the last several years are the direct result of Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights and other times when I went and I preached in a service where there wasn't very many people, where nobody was paying attention, where nobody cared, where I did things nobody else wanted to do, but I was doing so to remain faithful. And it was in my faithfulness that God began to see me and began to promote me. And it was in my faithfulness that doors opened that wouldn't have otherwise opened. And there are still times today when I don't feel like doing what I'm doing because I still haven't got to the picture He painted for me. But I remember that the price of the picture is faithfulness. So you got to keep on doing what God has called you to do, where He has called you to do it. It's not about what you're doing or where you're doing it. It's about, is it what's in front of you to do? Somebody said, well, God called me to do this, but it's not opening up for me. Well, that's fine. What is open for you? Everybody wants to get on the stage and grab a microphone. Nobody wants to clean bathrooms. But can I tell you that 99 times out of 100, the pathway to the stage goes through the toilet? Most people you see operating in platform ministry today have done their dues cleaning a bathroom, mowing a lawn, vacuuming a floor, corralling toddlers, whatever it may be, because my faithfulness is not dependent on me being where I'm supposed to be. It's upon me recognizing that there's something for me to do right where I am. You can sit and wait on the opportunity the rest of your life, or you can begin to maximize the opportunities right in front of you that don't look like your picture, but for whatever reason, they're what's there. And Joseph could have never understood, but each step led him in the direction to get in position for his picture. And if he had diminished or looked down on any of the steps and not remained faithful to do his best in the midst of what looked like meaningless, tedious tasks, he would have never gotten to what God asked him to do. And so I encourage you today, if you want to see your dream come to reality, you're going to have to be faithful to God and faithful to your responsibilities right where you are, as long as you are there. Well, can you tell me when God's going to promote me? Can you tell me when God's going to change it? No, I can't. But it will happen in your faithfulness. Well, let's try this second point, see if you like that one better. Humility. You got to be faithful, but you also must learn how to be humble. I think that one of the things that is implied from the story of Joseph, maybe it's not true, maybe I get corrected when I get to heaven, but it just seems to me that Joseph gives off an aura of arrogance early in his story. He seems to be someone who's pretty impressed with the coat that he's wearing, pretty impressed with the dream that he has, pretty impressed with his position in life. And yet his story begins to show us that God has a way of humbling us when we get too impressed with ourselves. You see, the reason God uses us to manifest his dreams is so that he gets the glory. And so as long as you're trying to get everyone to look at you, you can't do what he called you to do. And so he has a really good ability of bringing us down. I remember the first church I ever pastored. I was 21 years old, and this church had taken their last pastor to court to get him out of the parsonage. But I thought to myself, Ryan Harris plus anything equals revival. I was convinced that I was God's answer to the problems in the church. That anytime I showed up with the anointing on my life, that I would just stare down every devil, convince every deacon to do what's right, and everybody would just love me. That's what I was convinced of. The next 6 months was a case study in God reminding me that I'm just me. And that if problems exist, it won't be me that fixes them. It'll be him that fixes them. It won't be my sudden arrival on the scene. It will probably be my faithfulness to continue in the midst of the difficulty and the struggle. It took me a little while to figure that out. I came to Danville, and God blessed it. I talked about it last week, about how church grew, and I started thinking I was pretty special. I started thinking I was something really to behold. And the last 7 years, God has put me back in my place to recognize that where he's taking me, I can't be impressed with me. I have to learn that anything good is him. Anything that's going right is because he's doing it through me, not me doing anything of myself. I had to come to that place of humility. I had to come to that place where I recognize that it's not me, it's not my power, it's not my ability. Because you think about Joseph as he goes through this humbling process, becoming a slave, becoming a prisoner. Ultimately, to get to his dream, he helped a butler, he helped a baker, and then he would help Pharaoh with their dreams, all the while seemingly so far disconnected from what God had given him a picture of. He tells the butler and the baker, this is what your dream means. Remember, this is 13 years after he dreamed a dream. And so he tells them what it means, but he's sitting there going, don't you get excited, because, this could be years. And like days later, it comes to pass. Can you imagine how frustrated that would make you? If you had a dream that you still didn't fully understand, and it hadn't come to pass in 13 years, then God gives you the interpretation of somebody else's dream, and it comes to pass in days. That's frustrating. But he realizes it's not about me. It's about what God is doing through me. And so I'm not going to get focused on what has or hasn't happened for me, because I'm not worried about me. You see, what somebody said, I love how humility is defined by this individual. He said, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. It's not me going, well, I'm no good, because that's what a lot of people have believed humility to be, is some false piety where we just walk around and go, I'm nobody, I'm nothing, I can't do anything. That's not humility. Humility is confidence in what God has called me to be, but also recognizing that what I'm called to be and what I'm supposed to do has nothing to do with me. And so if I do what God calls me to do and it blesses other people and they get promoted beyond me, I'm okay with that, because I realize it was never about. But what you'll do when you find that out is that dreams are always interconnected. It is interesting because the butler, the baker, and Pharaoh, none of them get their dream to come to pass if Joseph wasn't there dreaming in front of them. But Joseph's dream never would have come to pass if he hadn't interpreted the butler, the baker, and Pharaoh's dreams. So what I see there is that my dream is connected to your dream. And when your dream comes to pass, it helps my dream come to pass. And when my dream comes to pass, it helps your dream come to pass. And so we got to stop being about us and start being about the preferred future that God has given us a picture of. And if you get yours first, I'll praise God with you, because it's not about me, it's about the future God has painted by giving us a picture, and it's a dream that we're dreaming. And so if your dream comes quicker, I'll shout with you because you got your dream, because it means mine must still be on the way. If you are not in a place where you can celebrate blessing in other people's lives, you are not in a place where God can bring you into your destiny. As long as you are so self-involved as to celebrate other people's failures and not their successes. You want to know why Joseph had to go to prison? Why he had to get in a deep, dark dungeon? Because it takes some serious difficulty to work that out of your humanity. Because it's our default nature to want other people to fail while we succeed. Because when others do well and I don't, it makes me look bad. And when others do poorly and I don't, it makes me look good. And I want to look good. And so in my humanity, I celebrate when others make mistakes, and I get frustrated when others are successful. But I must learn to, in my faithfulness, allow God to give me his heart, his mind, so that I walk in a level of humility where I say, it's not about me being promoted, it's about the kingdom being advanced. And so if every church in Danville grows, but mine doesn't, I will celebrate the growth of the kingdom. If everybody gets the preaching engagements that I wanted, people who can't preach out their way out of a wet paper sack, I've seen it happen. I'm like, seriously, you had them? But I've had to get to a place where I say, thank God he's using them. Thank God he's opening doors for them. Because maybe the reason why he's opening doors for them is because they're not so stuck on themselves. See, I'm preaching at myself today, and I think I'm hitting somebody else too. Because your situation may be different than mine, but humility is a prerequisite to the reality, your dream becoming a reality. The third thing, and I'm done this morning, is preparation. See, I'm not talking today about just enduring the process. I'm not talking about, well, if you can just hold on. Eventually, you have to understand something. Joseph dreamed at 17, didn't experience it till he was 30, but it wasn't the time that made the difference. It was how he spent the time. One of the things we have started to believe, I believe in the body of Christ in this culture, is that, well, if I wait long enough, the truth of the matter is, it's not about how long you're waiting. It's about how much you're developing. So they say, well, why was it 17 to 30? Well, here's another question you could ask. God gave Noah a dream. He said, I want you to build a boat because it's going to rain. And Noah started building a boat in the absence of any rain. And for 120 years, he built that boat, never seeing any rain. But he gets the boat built, and then after he gets the boat built, the rain comes. So the theological question would be, was it 120 years, because that's how long God had planned that it was going to rain 120 years from then, or was it 120 years, because like Moses or Noah, people mess that up all the time, and I laugh at them, and I almost made the same mistake. Noah, if he'd have built the boat in 80 years, he'd have sat there 40 years waiting on the rain. I don't believe that's true. I believe that if Noah would have built the boat in 32 weeks, it would have rained in 32 weeks. Because God didn't have a set time he was doing it. He had a set preparation before it happened. And if Noah could have built it faster, God would have done it faster. But God waited to do it till Noah had built it. And some of you are sitting around going, well, it's been 10 years, it's been 12 years. But what have you done with the years? How are you better suited today for the dream God gave you than you were the day he gave it to you? How have you advanced yourself? How have you improved yourself? How have you grown in your spiritual walk, in your emotional fortitude? How have you positioned yourself financially to be able to walk into the fullness of what God has for you? What have you done to prepare? Because it's not a date on a calendar. It's a destination that you reach because you've done the things that develop into position for it. And Joseph saw his dream come to pass because the entire time he was preparing himself. He didn't recognize it completely. He didn't understand that what he was learning in Potiphar's house, what he was learning in the prison, were the very principles he would need to succeed when he was with Pharaoh. He didn't understand that, but he was going through the process, being diligent and faithful, and he was preparing himself. But what I love the most is this text that I read to you this morning. 13 years he's been waiting. Doubters, detours, distractions, disappointments. But one fateful morning, he gets a call from Pharaoh's office. He's still in the prison, rotting away, and says, Pharaoh needs you. And I love what Joseph did. The Bible says he shaved, he changed his clothes, because he wasn't about to walk into that meeting with Pharaoh looking like a prisoner. He said, I don't know why I've been here, but I know I don't belong here. So I refuse to look like I'm from here. I'm going to go ahead and dress like where I'm going. I'm going to go ahead and prepare myself so that when I walk in the room, I don't look like the prisoner who got invited, but I look like someone who belongs here from the moment I walk in the door, because I've been preparing myself. I've been getting myself ready, and my identity is not where I am. My identity is where God said I'm going. And see, because in this story, Joseph started out with a coat of many colors. It was a sign of the favor of his father. His dad loved him above his brothers. But they took that coat from him. They ripped that coat up and soaked it in blood to fake his death. And he put on a slave's coat, where he then worked for Potiphar as a slave, was positioned at a higher level. And so I'm sure there was some other kind of clothes they put on him because he got to a higher level. But it was that coat that Potiphar's wife would yank off of him in her attempt to seduce him. And she would hold on to that coat. Potiphar, rather than returning him to that coat, would send him to prison, where he would put on a prison coat. And on that fateful morning, he took off his prison coat. And I don't know what he had or where he found it, but he put on something else. Notice how his coat changed over and over and over again. But his calling and his character never did. I want to talk to somebody this morning that says, I'm wearing a coat that isn't what I thought I would be wearing right now. I didn't think I would be wearing this, because in that culture, your clothes were your identity. There was a coat that was the favored sons. There was a coat that indicated I am a slave. There was a coat that said I'm a prisoner. There was a coat that he would wear that says I'm second in command. Those coats were identity, but Joseph found a way to find his identity not in what people saw of him, but in what he saw God said to him. And even though his coat didn't look like it, he was walking around as a king every day. He was walking around saying, I know the dream I have. Before it's over, this is who I'm going to be. So I'm not going to get caught up in who I look like right now, in who they say I am right now. And somebody in this room needs to stop worrying about what coat people have put on you. Because your coat is subject to change as long as your character and your calling doesn't. As long as you continue to be faithful to God. As long as you continue to walk in humility. As long as you continue to maximize the moments in your waiting. I guarantee you that someday you're going to put on a different coat, and it's going to be the right coat, and it's going to be the last coat. Because when you get to the place where your dream becomes reality, you're going to step into a season where you're never going back. You're never going to have to struggle like that again. You're never going to have to go through that development again, because from that point forward, all you're going to do is continue into what God has for you next. There is coming that day, but until that day comes, don't you get caught up in what people have labeled you. I'm just working at McDonald's. Don't you dare ever say that. See, I'm working my way into the God-given calling he has for me. Well, all they'll let me do is work in the nursery. Oh, get that out your mind. God's called you to preach to the nations, but he's put on you the coat of nursery right now. You just wear the coat of nursery, but remember, you're called to the nations. Don't let your coat hold you in a season you don't belong in. Sometimes you take it off, sometimes they take it off you, but it doesn't matter. You don't let it define you. You let your calling, you let your character define you, because that is the key to being someone who goes from dream to reality, is I don't let my coat bother me. I let my calling drive me. I let my character sustain me. And someday I'll look like I'm supposed to look. I have what I'm supposed to have, as long as I don't give up in the process. Stand with me all over the house. Thanks for watching this word today. I hope that it challenged you, and I hope it gave you some practical application for how you can follow Jesus more effectively. If by chance you're watching and you have never made Jesus Lord of your life, let's do that right now. If you just pray these simple words with me, the words aren't magic, but what you're saying, if you believe in your heart, it's going to change your entire life. Dear Jesus, I am a sinner. I believe you are a Savior. I ask you to forgive me. I ask you to cleanse me. And I declare that you are the Lord of my life. And from this day forward, I will follow you to the best of my ability. In Jesus' name, amen. If you prayed that prayer today, we are so excited, because you just began the first step of an amazing journey of following Jesus. But one thing's for sure, you can't do this alone. You need community. You need a church family. So please reach out to us. Let us know you prayed the prayer, and we'll give you some next steps about how you can follow Jesus and continue in your faith. Thanks for watching today. We love you, and I hope you'll come back and watch again next week when we have another word that I believe will minister to your life.